Inshallah, tonight we will begin with Surah Al-Isra. Okay, so tonight we will cover Surah Al-Isra. Inshallah, this is the 17th surah in the Quran. It's one of my personal favorites. So though I want to go very in-depth into the surah, I'm going to avoid that, inshallah, and we'll just do a basic primer into the surah. So I'll just talk about four major parts, four major things in the surah, and that's it. Just so that it can kind of pique your curiosity, hopefully, and encourage you to engage in your own reading and study of the surah and understand the beauty and the depth of the verses that are in the surah, as well as, of course, the stories and the lessons that we can derive from it. So, obviously, I'm sure we've all heard the word Isra before, and this refers to, of course, the night journey that the Prophet ﷺ took. The night journey the Prophet ﷺ took. So, let's just talk a little bit about the background of this surah so that we can understand what the significance of the surah is and how it directly impacted the Prophet ﷺ's emotional state, because this is also very important. So, the Prophet ﷺ, this was, according to many scholars, this surah was revealed in Amul Huzn. Amul Huzn is a year of sadness, a year of sorrow and grief that the Prophet ﷺ experienced. And this was the year when he ﷺ lost his wife, Khadija radiallahu anha, and his uncle, Abu Talib, in the same year. He lost them just a few months apart. So these were his two strongest supporters, and of course, not just emotionally, but also politically, they had really, been the people who were the bulwarks of Islam at that time. They had really protected the Muslims. But when they lost them, the Prophet ﷺ and the believers, now they were unfortunately left vulnerable and susceptible to attacks by the mushrikeen. So in that year, the Prophet ﷺ, that's also the year that Nabi ﷺ went to Ta'if. He went to Ta'if to give them da'wah. And the people of Mecca, they had rejected the Prophet ﷺ to the extent that they had boycotted the believers. So Nabi ﷺ thought, okay, let me go to Ta'if. This is also pretty, it's a big city, and it's burgeoning as well. So maybe we can go and see if they are receptive to this message. So Nabi ﷺ goes, gives them da'wah, and not only do they reject the message, but they assault the Prophet ﷺ, which is completely against etiquette. If someone comes to your door and let's say they try to sell you something, you're not going to punch and kick and spit at that person. You will just say no, thank you, close the door. That's at least common courtesy. But this is we don't even have common courtesy when it comes to. I'm talking about how we have, alhamdulillah, better than common courtesy in at least in our homes. We should, and definitely in I guess back home, for wherever that might be for all of us. We really take care of guests. That's kind of our what is not just socially acceptable, but that is the norm. That is a norm, and that was definitely the case during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, especially when they were living in the Hijaz. That the people, if you have a traveler, someone's traveling through the desert, if they're traveling through the desert, it's going to take them days and weeks to get home or to their destination. So if they're stopping by your place, you should do your best to take care of that person for 1 or 2 or 3 days. But not only did these people not take care of the Prophet ﷺ, but they physically assaulted and hurt him greatly. And as in this time when Nabi ﷺ, it's just hardship after hardship after hardship. It's like you lose your supporters, you lose your beloved family, you see your companions are suffering, you see your companions are dying, you see that you're being oppressed and attacked by outsiders. Nobody is being, open to your message. What do? Is at this time when Nabi ﷺ really felt like he was at his lowest. And Aisha radiallahu anha, she asked the Prophet ﷺ once, she said, "O Nabi ﷺ, what was the day that was most difficult upon you? What was the hardest day that you ever experienced in your life?" And Nabi ﷺ said, "The day of Ta'if." The day of Ta'if was the most difficult day in my life. So you can imagine what Nabi ﷺ went through on that day, right? The suffering that he ﷺ went through. And it was after this that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him a gift that nobody ever received, and nobody will ever receive. A gift like this is not that no prophet of Allah received this, and it was only for our Prophet ﷺ, something so special that was given to him just because of the hardships that he ﷺ experienced. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, okay, at this point, at your lowest point, now we will give you what you need to carry you through the rest of your mission and your the rest of your responsibilities and tasks. And this was arguably this was at like that halfway point. And I say arguably because there is some debate about when exactly did Isra wal Mi'raj take place. but it was basically at the halfway point of the messagehood of the Prophet ﷺ. During his prophethood, which was about 23 years, it was about that halfway point, Nabi ﷺ experienced al-Isra wal-Mi'raj. So Isra, so let's go into now the explanation of the surah. So it's a Makki surah, obviously, it was revealed in Makkah, and Isra means to take, or to al-Isra is taking someone or something by night. That's what it means, right? Sayr is literally traveling, and typically it's done through night, or done at night. And al-Isra means the taking of another person, okay, or another thing at night. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi, that glory be to the one who took his slave by night. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now this is, this shows the love that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for the Prophet ﷺ, honestly. Because what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi, that glory be to the one who he took his slave by night. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I did it. Even though we know that it's Jibreel alayhi salam, and there was the buraq, and there was this and this, and all of this stuff. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no. He takes the credit. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I did this, and I did it for my slave. I did it for my servant. Who was that? It's the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is not like to call the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam the Abd of Allah. This is the highest praise that anyone can have. For you and I to be called the Abd, the slave of Allah, this is the greatest praise that we can have, honestly, because it is accepting that, okay, He is our master. Whatever my master wants, I'll do it for him. That's it. And we have been created for exactly that, for worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for ubudiyyah. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created jinn and ins except so that they may worship me. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam his Abd, that means that, okay, you have done exactly what you were created to do. للعبودية. You have been created for ubudiyyah, for worship, and for slavehood, and you have fulfilled that. You have done exactly what you were created to do. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly tells him that, look, even though it feels like you have such a long way to go, you've already, done what you were created to do. Now just do, now to get you through the rest of your message, okay, the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to strengthen the Prophet's resolve. He's going to really give him strength. How does he do so? So he says, لَيْلًا مِنَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ إِلَى الْمَسْجِدِ الْأَقْصَى. So let's talk about a little bit about Al-Isra, and there's a difference obviously between Isra and Mi'raj, so we'll talk about that. So Isra is when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was taken from Mecca towards Jerusalem. Okay, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was taken from Mecca to Jerusalem. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was sleeping in the house of Hani. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was sleeping in her house when the roof was removed. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam sees Jibreel alayhi salam, and he is taken from her house. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is transported to the Kaaba. Basically, they go towards the Kaaba, and then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam lays down there, and then he has his chest opened up. He has his chest open, and his heart is taken out, and his heart is cleaned and washed. And this was not, understand, okay, all of this, Al-Isra and Mi'raj, when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is taken from Mecca to Jerusalem, from there all the way to the heavens, and all the way back down and back home. None of this was in his mind, and none of this was a dream. This was physically and spiritually and in complete physical total control of his body. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam experienced this, just like you and I, we have her physical form right now. That's how Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam experienced this. It was not maybe he dreamt it, or maybe it was like his soul transported or something. No, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was physically present in all of this. I'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. So when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had his chest cut open, this was an actual cutting open, okay? And his chest and his heart was actually removed, and it was actually washed and cleansed. And the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it was washed in a bowl that had filled with zamzam and filled with hikmah and iman. Okay, it was filled with hikmah and iman. So how do these archetypes turn into the physical? That's something that is beyond our knowledge and understanding. But that is according to the hadith. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam then he had his heart re-entered into his chest, and then it was sewn back up. And there are Sahaba who narrate, they say that I saw the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam once his shirt had come up, and I saw Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that he had a cut on his chest. He had that scar was still there. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's scar was still there on his chest. So this was, like I said, not something that just happened in his mind or in his dream or something like that. So he then he rides on the buraq. So the buraq is not like some mythical beast or some kind of unicorn or something like that. Okay, it was basically something like it's hard to give a example because we don't really have it. But according to the hadith, it was like a little bit bigger than a mule, smaller than a donkey, I think, or vice versa. Basically, it was maybe knee high. I wouldn't say it's maybe a little bit smaller, and The Prophet ﷺ, it didn't have like wings or something like that. There isn't really anything that says that it was some kind of dragon or weird animal. I don't know. So Nabi Sallallahu sits on it, and then of course I'm very tempted to go into all the details, but I'm going to refrain. So eventually, the Prophet ﷺ, he is transported, and the first stop he actually makes is in Medina. Nabi Sallallahu actually makes a stop in Medina, Yathrib, and then he gets off and he prays 2 rakats there, and then he gets back on and he leaves. And when he stops there, he asks, he's like, "What is this?" And then eventually, Nabi Sallallahu is told that this is the place of migration where you will migrate to. And then Nabi Sallallahu goes and he stops elsewhere. He stops at the Tur Sinai, which is the mountain where Musa alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Musa alayhi salam. Then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is taken from there to Bethlehem. Bethlehem, this is also Beit Laham. Beit Laham, this is where Isa alayhi salam was born. Jesus was born. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is taken there. Then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he goes over or stops at, according to other narrations, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam actually sees the grave of Musa alayhi salam. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam sees the grave of Musa alayhi salam, and then he sees Musa alayhi salam actually praying inside his grave. He sees him praying inside his grave. And then finally he Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gets to the Beit al-Maqdis. He gets to the masjid, the furthest masjid, and there was no masjid at that time. Okay, there's no masjid at that time, so it's a compound. And this is something we need to understand when we say, al-Masjid al-Aqsa is just not, it's not referring to a little masjid. It refers to that entire compound, right? It's not just the dome over the rock, okay? It's that huge compound, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was transported there. And at that time, so the question is that, that time it had been made into, like a place of refuse, and it was just like a wasteland there. So how, what did it look like at that time? Well, this is, according to some scholars, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had actually made it, at least at that time, to appear to the Prophet ﷺ like it should be. It appear in a clean state, and not like a wasteland and a refuse or wasteland or a landfill or something like that. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, after he goes, and then he ties up the buraq, and then he goes to the masjid. So obviously, if there's a masjid, then clearly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had definitely changed the setting of the atmosphere at that time for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then he meets all of the other prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Anbiya, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam leads them in prayer. So all of them, over 124,000 of them are praying behind him in one saf. Okay, how does that happen? And again, that's beyond our knowledge, right? It's beyond our understanding, but it did. Because that single saf of 124,000 prophets shows that لا نفرق بين أحد منهم, that we don't separate between any of the prophets. Oh, this one is better, this one is not so, and this one. No. All of them are in that same line, because they're all equal prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is their imam. He's Imam al-Anbiya, he's their leader. So he leads them in prayer, and then they finish their prayer behind the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And this was, of course, sealing the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's imam, his leadership, and of course that he is the final prophet. There's no prophet coming after you that he's going to have to come and lead you and everyone else. No, you are the one who leads everyone else. And then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam begins his ascent to the heavens and to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is known as Mi'raj. Okay, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says in a hadith that I was taken up. Okay, Mi'raj is the ascension of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So now there's like a little pattern that occurs where, and if I went into the actual hadith of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which is a lengthy hadith, it's a very beautiful hadith, and we can talk about the specific words that are used and why is this used, why is this not used, I would really recommend that you would read it. Inshallah, we all get the opportunity to do so. So Jibreel alayhi salam takes the Prophet ﷺ, and then they go to the first heaven, and in the first heaven, they get entry. After they get entry and entrance into the first heaven, they meet Adam alayhi salam, and then after that they go to the second one, they meet Yahya alayhi salam and Isa alayhi salam. So they are two cousins, Yahya and Isa alayhi salam. So then they go to the next one, which is Yusuf alayhi salam, and then they go to the fourth heaven, they see Idris alayhi salam. The fifth heaven, they see Harun alayhi salam. The sixth one, they see Musa alayhi salam, and the seventh one, they see Ibrahim alayhi salam, who is, of course, the great grandfather of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We see him, and he is actually resting against al-Bayt al-Ma'mur, which is the equivalent of the Kaaba, which we have the Kaaba on earth, and then there is a spiritual equivalent of it, just made of nur, of light, which is in the seventh heaven. And the Prophet __ also sees a Sidrat al-Muntaha. He sees a Sidrat al-Muntaha, which is the lote tree that is at the furthest extent. And this is also where that tree extends. And according to some, it starts in the sixth heaven and it goes all the way up into the seventh heaven. This is how massive that tree is. and I don't know if I'm sure, inshallah, we've heard this, the beauty of an explanation of how big all of the heavens are, and talk about our cosmology. Our universe is like a ring. It's like a ring that you would put on your finger. That is our universe, our entire dunya. Compared to, and you take that ring and you throw it into a desert, or you throw it into a field or in a lake. So you throw this ring into that desert, then that desert is the second heaven, and our universe is just that little ring there. We lose our rings in our own homes, right? We'll lose it in, just drop it on the floor and we lost it. We'll lose it somewhere in our bedroom, or we'll lose it somewhere in our clothes. How are we going to find it in a desert? And that is the size of the first heaven to the second. And the second heaven to the third is again. So the Prophet ﷺ goes and he interacts with all of these prophets. He speaks to all of them, and they have dialogue with the Prophet ﷺ. Eventually he goes there. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he goes into the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says that, I had even heard the sarif al-aqlam, the pens as they were writing against the tablets. The Prophet ﷺ said, I heard this. And then he ﷺ was granted an audience with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which not even Jibreel alayhi salam, who is the closest angel to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even Jibreel alayhi salam does not have the audience with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the Prophet ﷺ did. He ﷺ went into the presence and and he experienced the divine at a level that is unimaginable, right? For you and I, it's beyond comprehension, and Nabi ﷺ himself managed to experience this. And there is a difference of opinion. Did the Prophet ﷺ see his Lord or no? And someone asked, and the Prophet ﷺ said, when he was asked about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the countenance of God, the divine consonants and the beatific vision, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that Nurun anna arahu. He said Nurun ala nur anna arahu. Light upon light, how can I see him? How can I see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He is nur. And we use the word light, but it's not light. Nur is not light. Nur is something beyond that. It's something that has a metaphysical reality just as much as it does a physical one. And there are some Sahaba who did have the opinion that the Prophet ﷺ saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, Aisha radiallahu anha, she says no. Nabi ﷺ did not see the Prophet ﷺ. This was her opinion, and she was very staunch in her opinion. And this seems to be the opinion of the majority of scholars, that the Prophet ﷺ did not actually see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in dunya, because he was still, this is something that is reserved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until akhirah. And this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised for the inhabitants of Jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it's only for people of Jannah that they will get to see their Lord. So after this, the Prophet ﷺ is given as a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 5 times daily salah. 5 times prayer is given to the Prophet ﷺ in the presence of God. Now imagine, the importance of prayer. Now, of course, we know that it was not 5 times, it was 50 times. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam went down to Musa alayhi salam, and then he went back up, and then he went back down, and went back up, until it was reduced from 50 to 5 times daily prayers. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said that, whoever prays for these 5 times, then they will get the reward of praying 50 times. So this is the importance of prayer, that, all of the commandments of Islam, everything in Islam, it was revealed. It came down from the heavens. It came down to this lowly earth that you and I reside in. But the command for prayer, the command for salah, the Prophet ﷺ was taken from this earth all the way up into the presence of God until he was given this. So just think about the importance of this prayer, this worship, something that we have, wallahi, and it's something that no one else has. And if you think about it, how lucky are we? How fortunate are we? Those who don't have this, they don't know what it's like. They don't know what it is. And when they see it, when they see Muslims praying outside, when the disbelievers and those who are not privileged and lucky enough to know what salah is, when they see the Muslims praying in public, and when they see them in large jama'ats, and when we're making our adhan and we're reading and doing tilawah of Quran, and they hear these beautiful voices reading the word of Allah, and they think that, what is this? Like, I've never heard music like this. I've never heard singing like this. I've never heard humming or anything like this before. This is not chanting. This is nothing like that. What is this? Or when they see us making movements, they think that, what? I've never seen someone make movements like that. And they just stare at us and they make recordings, and they're so, they're just smiling. They know, because it's something deep down under and inside them. They know that is, drawing them, attracting them that, hey, you should join in. Why don't you go and do this? And just recently, someone shared with me a very interesting video. It's from years ago, of some people in China that they were Chinese Muslims and they were praying. There's a large group of Chinese Muslims praying, and people just started joining in. Like people who had no idea how to pray. They're not Muslim or anything, right? They're like, a lot of them were police officers and government officials, and they just started imitating them. So they're praying in random directions. Like, the Imam is leading this way, and the people behind him, many of the people behind him are leading like this way and this way, completely, and they don't know what they're doing. They're just making the same ruku and sajda that the believers are doing. But they just feel that desire that, let me do this. I don't know what this is. So this is, that beauty of salah. It's just, something that your body craves to do. You physically just crave to do it. And it's such a natural thing as well. Honestly, that ruku' is such a natural position, and that sajda that we make is such a natural position to be in, where we put our face on the ground. We don't do it for anyone else, for anything else. We will never do it for our bosses or our subordinates, or for the king or president, or for anyone else. We wouldn't do it for our family. But the only one that we would ever do this for is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What a beautiful thing that the Prophet ﷺ was gifted with, and of course that he informed us about, and that we were gifted with as a result. And then Nabi ﷺ, of course, after this, he made his way back down to the heavens until Nabi ﷺ returned to Jerusalem, and then he ﷺ was taken back to Mecca, and then he went back to sleep. Now, this journey of the Prophet ﷺ, by the way, as he was traveling from Jerusalem to Mecca, Nabi ﷺ saw some caravans that were going into Mecca itself. And when Nabi ﷺ returned to his bed, according to some narrations, it was still warm. So, this was, you can tell that this journey was one that was where our current understanding of, the laws of our temporal, spatial universe were bent. I think that's the simplest way of explaining this. There's a lot we don't understand, even about our physical universe. And the one who has created the laws in the physical universe, clearly he has more than enough ability and understanding to change things and edit them and modify them as he so wills and wishes. So though it was a physical journey of the Prophet ﷺ, things did not operate as they do normally. Definitely. The animal that the Prophet ﷺ rode, he said that it was every step it took, it reached the horizon. So just one step reached one horizon, the other step took, just as far as the eye can see, basically. Now, when Nabi ﷺ woke up in the morning, obviously he had to go and tell, and this was something that he was thinking, okay, well, I have to go and tell people about this, because, we just got commands to pray 5 times a day. At this point, the believers were only praying twice a day. They would pray in the morning, they would pray in the evening. But now these new commandments have come that, okay, you got to pray 5 times a day, you have to do this. And so now he thinks, okay, I have to tell the believers. And obviously this is also da'wah that I have to give to the non-believers. I have to tell them what I just experienced. And when he begins to tell them, they begin to mock him and ridicule him. They say, oh, this is insane. I mean, this is it. This takes the cake. I mean, after everything you've been claiming, now you mean to tell us you traveled all the way to Jerusalem and you traveled to God, and you came back down in one night. And they say, okay, you know what, let's go and begin mocking and ridiculing his companions. And they turn to, of course, they go to the staunchest, and most ardent follower of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. They go to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and they tell him, this is what your sahib, your companion says. Muhammad claims that he has traveled to Jerusalem, and then he met to God, and then he came back down. And he says, did he really say this? They say, yeah. He said, okay, I believe him. And this is like instantaneous. He said, are you sure that he said this? He said, yeah. He said, okay, then I believe him. If he said it, then I believe it. And they were shocked, thinking like, how can you believe this? It goes completely against, everything we know. Are you serious? And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, I believe that God sends an angel who speaks to him, and he brings him revelation. This is nothing, right? I believe in something much greater than this. You think I'm not going to believe if he says this? Of course I believe in this. Whatever he says, I believe in. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the title of As-Siddiq, the one who, when he hears, that the Nabi says this or Allah says this, right away, without hesitation, without any doubt whatsoever, he affirms it as truth. He says, this is it. Absolutely, I don't have any shred of doubt whatsoever. And this is the iman, the yaqeen of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So the mushrikeen, they go to test the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They go to test him. They say, okay, let's see now. You claim that, you went there and stuff. why don't you prove to us, is there any proof or evidence that you can give? And the Prophet ﷺ says, okay, according to one narration, this is something that I've heard, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it, they began to test it, began to quiz the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, tell us, what is visible there in Jerusalem? What can you see? Just give us descriptions, landmarks, this and that. Because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there's no report that he had ever visited that place. So, they know that he has never been there. So they think that, okay, now he's claiming he's gone there. Okay, tell us about it. So the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is struggling to come up with details, because understand, this was at night. And today, if we go out at night, we have lights and stuff. There's no lights at that time. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was, preoccupied with other things at that time. So he was struggling to come up with details, and at this moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he lifted, the vision for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so he was able to see it. He was actually able to see Jerusalem in front of him. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam begins to describe it. He begins to describe it in detail, and there are people there who had been there, and they think that actually, yeah, he's pretty spot on actually with whatever he's saying. He's, describing it to the T, exactly what it's like, how we remember seeing it. So the people of Mecca were kind of shocked. They were thinking, okay, well, is there anything else? And they say, no, you know what, this doesn't satisfy us, because we haven't been there, we don't know, we have to take secondhand accounts. And the Prophet ﷺ says, okay, there's a caravan that's coming. There's a caravan that's coming in from the desert. They're coming from this direction. They will come into the city. And he said they will be here by today. They should be here by today, I believe. And they said, okay, let's wait. And so Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is waiting, and the caravan actually gets held up. The caravan is getting held up, and it's delaying. So, the sun is setting, and it seems like, the sun will set, and they will not arrive on time. So he said that they will be here before the day is done. So the mushrikeen are getting happy, and the Prophet ﷺ gets anxious. He makes dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala divinely, he holds up the sun. He prevents the sun from actually setting, so he actually holds it in place. Imagine, right? The sun is just, it's not moving. I mean, time is passing, but the sun is not moving. And the caravan comes in, and then the sun sets, and they see that the caravan is coming, just like the Prophet ﷺ, said. And he actually described the caravan exactly. He said, okay, there's this, and then he even told, the people of the caravan, oh, I know you saw this, or you experienced this, and everything that he said checked out. And still, unfortunately, the people of Mecca, they refuse to believe the Prophet ﷺ, this miraculous event. Now, when we say this is not anything that we have an issue with. We have absolutely no problem with affirming the validity of this event and the possibility of it. It is not something that goes against rationality, or it's not something that is irrational. It is something that is supra-rational, Our understanding of time and space and all of these things, it changes. It varies. Our paradigms have shifted several times in the past 2 or 3 centuries. Our understanding of how space, time, gravity, all of these things work. And undoubtedly, it will change again within the next century. Undoubtedly, it will change again several times in the next few centuries. So how Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was taken, and it was not something of his own volition. He did not actively do something. He also did not fold space-time, but this is by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. God can use any means that he so wants to do whatever he so wishes. And this is exactly what he did with the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam at this time, where he took him from his home, from Mecca to Jerusalem, to the 7th heaven, all the way back to Jerusalem, all the way back to his home in a single night. So after the Prophet ﷺ, he experienced this, and he met with those prophets who had also gone through so many hardships and difficulties. The Prophet ﷺ met with Yahya alayhi salam, who was killed. He met with Isa alayhi salam, who was almost killed. He met with Harun alayhi salam. He met with Musa alayhi salam. He met with Ibrahim alayhi salam. He met with all of these prophets and all the things that they went through. And he met with Adam alayhi salam. He met with Ibrahim alayhi salam. All of their hardships and difficulties. And the Prophet ﷺ, he spoke to them, he saw them, he spent time with them. And then, this was like a reminder for him that, hey, yeah, you're definitely going through a lot. Don't think you're not going. We know you are. We are not, denying your hardships or difficulties. We are affirming them. And guess what? They also went through a lot. And now look at where they are today. Look at their situation. Look at their circumstance. And, they are in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are in the heavens with Allah. And this is another thing, the nature of the soul. This is I'll speak a little bit about this inshallah tomorrow. Yeah, we'll talk about this a little bit in the next surah, in Surah Kahf. We'll talk about it, though the verse is mentioned in this surah. So we'll talk about the questions that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was asked in the next surah inshallah. And in the answer is given in this surah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. So this surah, one of the names of this surah is another name for is Al-Isra, and there's also Bani Israel, Surah to Bani Israel. So it's named after Bani Israel as well, and you can tell that it's going to have a lot of things about Bani Israel in it. Bani Israel in it. Jerusalem is very significant for them, of course. Jerusalem is very significant for the Jewish people, for the Bani Israel, for the tribes of Yaqub alayhi salam, basically the children of Yaqub alayhi salam. Remember in Surah Yusuf we talked about how Yaqub alayhi salam has 12 children, 12 sons, and those 12 sons are from them come the 12 tribes of Israel. And another name of Yaqub alayhi salam is Israel, okay, Israel. So not Israel the country, because as we know Israel doesn't exist. So Israel, Bani Israel, so they are the sons or the children of Israel, Yaqub alayhi salam. Now, this surah is also named after them, so you can tell that it will have a lot of things that that allude to them, talk about them, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a lot of commands for them, as well as just society and people in general. And the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Masjid al-Aqsa at the very, very beginning is, really it takes the attention of the Bani Israel, that right away they're thinking, oh, okay, let's listen to this. Now, one of the things that the people the Jewish tribes of Medina, they did was they asked the Prophet several questions. One of the questions they asked him when he was in Mecca, they also asked him in Medina. About the soul. One of the questions they asked was, what is the reality of the soul? What do you know about the soul? So the Prophet ﷺ, he's not going to answer by his own accord. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him revelation. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. When they ask you about the soul, قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. Say that the soul is from the command of my Lord. Allah commands it, and that's what it is. It's what Allah knows. I don't know. وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. You've only been given a very little amount of knowledge. Now the reason I brought this up, aside from the obvious that it was something that the Jewish tribes had asked the Prophet ﷺ about the soul, but it was also, if you notice in the story, that Musa alayhi salam, how many places was he in Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj? How many places we mentioned him? 3 times. So we mentioned him that he was in his grave, he was praying in his grave. The Prophet ﷺ saw Musa alayhi salam making salah in his grave. Then Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam went to, when he was in Jerusalem, he was leading all of the Anbiya, all of the prophets behind him in prayer. So Musa alayhi salam was also behind him, praying his salah there. And then Musa alayhi salam was, where else? It was also in the heavens, where when the Prophet ﷺ went to the heavens, he meets Harun alayhi salam, and then in the 6th heaven he meets Musa alayhi salam. So Musa alayhi salam is in his qabr, he's in Jerusalem, and then he's also in the heavens as well. So this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala affords to those few souls, and obviously this kind of freedom is the soul that is given to the souls of the Anbiya, the souls of the prophets. And then the souls of others, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has the ability to give them whatever level of freedom that He so wishes. And that is, another a very, very interesting subject and a very interesting discussion. Inshallah, maybe one day we'll have it where we talk about, our understanding of the soul and its attributes and the nature of the soul, inshallah. I just thought I would mention that because it's very interesting how Musa alayhi salam is in several places, or his soul at least is in several places in a very short amount of time, or if maybe simultaneously. Now, some verses that I really wanted to go into, but they are quite lengthy, so I just thought I would make mention of a large portion of these verses. Is verses 22 to 39. Yeah, verses 22 to 39. So if you notice that this is, it's about, almost 18 or 19 verses. I mean, I'm approximating the numbers here. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a list of commands and prohibitions, of course, in these 17, 18, 19 verses. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just says time and again, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. And He first begins with the most significant command, and that is, of course, the prohibition of shirk, where He says, لا تجعل مع الله إلها آخر فتقعد مذموما مخذولا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't make another ilah, another God aside from Allah. As a result, you might be disgraced and forsaken, thrown into hellfire because you have committed polytheism. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says all of these other commands. So the first thing is shirk. Don't do shirk. Now do or don't do these things. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَنْ لَا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ. Now He talks about the qadiyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what He has written for us to do and what He has written for us to avoid. And He subhanahu wa ta'ala talks a lot about treating the parents with respect, treating those who are nearest to us, as well as taking care of the poor and the downtrodden, the weak in society, as well as avoiding israf. إِنَّ الْمُبَذِّرِينَ كَانُوا إِخْوَانَ الشَّيَاطِينَ. Do not squander your wealth. Do not be wasteful in the things that you do. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَلَا تَجْعَلْ يَدَكَ مَغْلُولَةً إِلَىٰ عُنُقِكَ. Do not be tight-fisted, right? So basically, don't be completely engaged in extravagant spending, but don't also be completely tight-fisted. Just I'm not going to give away even a single dime. وَلَا تَبْسُطْ كُلَّ الْبَسْطِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلَا تَبْسُطْهَا كُلَّ الْبَسْطِ. And then don't also extend your hand completely. Basically, be just in the way that you do all of your things. Be mu'tadil. Be a person who's on kind of average, basically. And then He subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is also, I made mention of this verse earlier, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ خَشْيَةَ إِمْلَاقٍ. Do not kill your children out of fear of poverty. And then we talked about this in length in previous lessons. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُكُمْ وَإِيَّاكُمْ. نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُهُمْ وَإِيَّاكُمْ. We are the ones who give them sustenance. We give you sustenance. Don't worry about who takes care of you. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about avoiding murder. He talks about avoiding adultery. He talks about avoiding injustice or oppression in terms of business and commerce, cheating people there. And then He subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't follow others blindly. Don't fall into the same questionable things that people are engaged in. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed your hearing, your eyes, and your heart, all of these things will be asked on the Day of Judgment. So Allah will ask us, okay, what did you look at? What did you hear? And then Allah will ask us, okay, your heart, what intentions did you have? What were you, feeling and thinking? Oh, I decided to do this. I decided not to do this. Here's why I did this. And, to others, it might seem like you did this because you're a generous person, but Allah knows your true motives. Allah knows, your exterior motives might be, very obvious and clear to others, but Allah knows what your ulterior motives really are and what you're hiding. And He subhanahu wa ta'ala also tells us not to be people of pride and arrogance. وَلَا تَمْشِي فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't walk as if you're someone or something special. إِنَّكَ لَن تَخْرِقَ الْأَرْضِ. You're not going to split the earth open. Who do you think you are? That you're going to be able to break the earth open and you have some kind of strength of your own. وَلَن تَبْلُغَ الْجِبَالَ طُولًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you're not going to go be as tall as the mountains. You're not high as the mountains, nor are you strong enough to destroy this earth. All of these things are evil, and we should avoid all of these things. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَلِكَ مِمَّا أَوْحَى إِلَيْكَ رَبُّكَ مِنَ الْحِكْمَةِ. This is just some of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed to you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the wisdom of your Lord. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that, and then He, of course, just like He began talking about, okay, don't engage in shirk, engage in tawheed, engage in monotheism and the oneness of God. He concludes this, large, 20 verses or so of commands where He says that وَلَا تَجْعَلْ مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the same thing at the very beginning. He said at the very beginning, He says the same thing at the end. Don't make another Lord with Allah. Don't make another Lord with Allah. And then, so these are the two, if you're making a sandwich, right, a command sandwich. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says the first thing, don't engage in shirk. Last thing, don't engage in shirk. And then do all of these things in between as well. So these are, this is verses 22 to 39, if you would like to go into that yourself, inshallah. It's very, very interesting to see the commandments Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the believers even before they moved into their own society. These are just, things that we should engage in be it a Muslim society or not. So we don't have the excuse anymore that, oh, well, we live in the West, we live in this and that. You talk about the West. Well, the people of Mecca were more the West than the West is today. So they were engaged in quite a bit. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He revealed these commandments and prohibitions during that time when the believers were in Mecca at that time. So just as it was pertinent to those people, it is also pertinent to us in today's day and age. And then I wanted to conclude with mention of just one final verse, actually one final point, and then it's a couple of verses. So in these verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He really warns the Prophet ﷺ, and by extension, you and I. So, going back to that, well, we live in the West kind of argument. So we think that, oh, well, this is maybe we can have some leeway, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. Changing the religion from what Allah and His Rasul have commanded for us to do and have written down for us, so that, okay, this is permissible, this is not permissible, this is halal, this is haram, and making our own interpretations so that it kind of suits our whims and our will. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He warns the Prophet ﷺ, He warns the Prophet ﷺ, because this is exactly what the disbelievers they did. They came to the Prophet ﷺ and they said, look, you know what, we will accept if you change this, change that, change this, and change that. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him that, okay, don't get any ideas. Don't get any ideas. He says, وَإِن كَادُوا لَيَفْتِنُونَكَ عَنِ الَّذِي أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, these people, they have tried to tempt you. They've tried to tempt you from that which we have revealed upon you. They wanted to kind of turn you away from what revelation that we gave you. لِتَفْتَرِيَ عَلَيْنَا غَيْرًا. And then that if you, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you had followed them, then what would you have done? They want you to basically make a lie against us, to say that, oh, Allah said this, or Allah did not say this, or Allah meant this, or Allah did not mean this. Okay? And he said, غَيْرَ isn't a غَيْرَ الْحَقِّ, basically aside from, attribute something to us that we did not say. وَإِذًا لَاتَّخَذُوكَ خَلِيلًا. They said that if you do this, then we'll be your friend, we'll support you, we'll become believers, we'll be this and that. So basically, how does it apply to us? Think about it, how many people want us to make changes to our religion? How many people want us to compromise? How many people want us to give up on our principles and teachings of our religion, our deen, our sharia? And if they do, then they'll accept. If we do, then they'll accept us. Then they will support us, and they'll give us some grants and funding, and we'll become popular in their eyes. Many people want to do that for us, and this is exactly, or want us to do that for them. And this is exactly what the disbelievers wanted from the Prophet ﷺ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, then they will take you as a friend. So then how does He subhanahu wa ta'ala refer to, or how does He address the Prophet ﷺ now? He says, وَلَوْلَا أَن ثَبَّتْنَاكَ. And had we not given you thabat, had we not given you steadfastness and firmness, had we not planted your feet, لَقَدْ كِدْتَ تَرْكَنُ إِلَيْهِمْ شَيْئًا قَلِيلًا. You, O Muhammad ﷺ, you would have been tempted to turn towards them just slightly. شَيْئًا قَلِيلًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala literally says a little bit. Okay, if we did not make you firm and plant your feet and keep you on the straight path, you might have felt inclined that, well, they are making a good point. If I just change, maybe we go a little bit easier on this, or maybe we change that, maybe we change this, then they might accept. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, had you done that, had we not done this and you had done that, then here's what would have happened. So understand that Allah did make the Prophet ﷺ firm, and the Prophet ﷺ never inclined towards them. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just saying for anyone else. Okay, and for the Prophet, if He's saying it about the Prophet ﷺ, it definitely applies to us more so, exponentially more so. So what does He say? That إِذًا لَأَذَقْنَاكَ. Had you turned towards them, had you said that, well, you know what, they make a good point, maybe I should do something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, had you done that, لَأَذَقْنَاكَ ضِعْفَ الْحَيَاةِ وَضِعْفَ الْمَمَاتِ. We would have given you twice the punishment of dunya, twice the punishment of akhirah. ثُمَّ لَا تَجِدُ لَكَ عَلَيْنَا نَصِيرًا. Then you would not find anyone to help you against us. Those khalil, those friends that you have, they would have abandoned you. We would have definitely punished you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is who? The Prophet ﷺ. Now understand, please, as I mentioned earlier, and I'll mention again, Nabi ﷺ never inclined towards what they were saying, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself had made the Prophet ﷺ very firm on Islam, very firm. So Nabi ﷺ never turned towards that. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, had we not done that, and we left you to it, and then you had done it, then we would have done this. Okay? So now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has left you and I kind of free to choose, right? So if we turn towards where people are saying, hey, you know what, maybe if Islam, are you sure Islam says this? Are you sure God is, are you sure Muhammad did this? Or, well, we don't have to agree with Muhammad on everything. So this is unfortunate when some people say that, well, you don't have to agree with the Prophet ﷺ on every single thing. You do, okay? And if people, they try to turn us away from that, oh, well, you don't have to take every verse, you just, okay, this surah you can kind of put away in the corner for now. We don't need to really look into that. When people they claim that they will support us if we do exactly that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that for those people we have something waiting for them. So just be ready for that. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself never did that. But if he said that about the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, what would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do to you and I if we go around saying, oh, God said this or God said that, that is a very dangerous thing to do. Very, very dangerous thing to do, to make up a claim against God. That's exactly what it is, right? You and I would be making up claims against God. God said this or God did that, when God did not say it or do any of those things. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, He is, the most wise. And He says, وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنِ افْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, who is more of an oppressor than the one who makes claims against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, false attributions against Allah. And this is where you say that, oh, God gives me permission to do this, God said this, God said don't do this. So the people who are, people who have a little bit of knowledge is kind of a dangerous thing for people who do have that knowledge and understanding, because they can twist the words of deen, they can twist the teachings of deen however they so want. We should be careful going fatwa shopping, honestly, that, oh, well, you know what, I really like lobster, and, for the Hanafis, lobster isn't permissible. For everyone else, it's pretty much permissible. So, you know what, I think I'm going to just, have lobster. I mean, no, I think you should, be very, very careful that, are you having that food because, your nafs or your whims desire it, or because, you understand the nuance of that fiqh ruling, of that Islamic ruling. So we should be very careful in thinking, the deen is a plaything, because it's not. It's absolutely not. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warned the Prophet ﷺ from changing anything in the deen. So what about you and I? What about you and I? So on this kind of a scary note, I'll just leave it at that. And this month of Ramadan, especially, when, all of these things that are halal for us, we have turned away from them. We have turned away from them, and we have avoided partaking in that which is halal for us. If that's the case, then we should be even more so fearful in coming months, when Ramadan has passed, and in the remainder of our lives, from all of those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram upon us, has made completely impermissible. Today, people they text me saying, can I use mouthwash? Can I use this? Can I use that? This is how afraid we are when we are fasting, that I might just swallow a little bit of mouthwash. Does that break my fast? People are so afraid of that. But when the month of Ramadan is done, where is that same fear? Where is that same fear when it comes to haram, not even halal? Today we are afraid of engaging in something halal when we're fasting. So what about in the month of, or outside of the month of Ramadan? What about the things that are haram? So we should avoid them just as much, if not more so. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq, and He give me tawfiq, and you as well, inshallah, in holding fast to the teachings of our deen, and not falling into the ways of those who had come before us and who have lost their way. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us strength, and may He give us sihha and afiyah. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.